Welcome back to the Tectonic Takes podcast. We got two co-hosts for you today, Abram and myself, Ivan. And ahead of the telenovela that will likely be Chicho Arango's debut for the Sounds of Earthquakes, who else would we play against other than Real Salt Lake? And one thing I just noticed as I introduced LD here is that I ended up wearing red today and you ended up wearing blue. So a little bit of a color swap there, although it is an RSL jersey. But LD, how are you doing? This is, I believe, your second time on the podcast.
Yeah, what's up, Ivan? What's up, Aram? It's good to be back. It is my second time on the podcast. Always excited to come and talk soccer with you guys. No, it's good to be here. I think we're all excited that MLS is about to kick off. Obviously, we have the Champions League games coming up, and then as well MLS coming this weekend. So it's a fun time to be a fan of the game and especially a fan of this league and a fan for Real Salt Lake and San Jose Earthquakes. So excited to chat about it with you two today.
Yeah, I feel like the off season has went by super fast. We're recording this on Tuesday, February 18th. We are 5 games away from the start of MLS play, and we're brimming with anticipation about what's going to happen. And I think that we could be all over the map with our expectations for both these clubs. So I think most neutral MLS riders, like on the official website, are going kind of middle of the road. I believe we were back to back 17 and 18, 17 Real Salt Lake, 18 San Jose Earthquakes power rankings. So for whatever that's worth, let's parry that over to LD. Tell us a little bit about how you feel the last season went, a few key storylines to look forward to going into this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say it was a dream magical start for RSL at the beginning of 2024, right? We started off hot. Chicho Arango looked like he was literally going to challenge Lionel Messi for not even the Golden Boot, but even possibly MLS MVP, right? It was just a really amazing start. We had Andres Gomez also contributing at a very high clip. We were gelling. We were playing very well. Pablo Mastroeni seemed he had really lifted this team to a new height. And it was just a place that us as RSL fans hadn't felt like we'd been in since the glory days of Jason Christ leading the club. And so that was really exciting and fun to see. But we kind of all saw as, Leagues Cup approached, there was the Chicho Arango suspension that happened. And ever since that suspension had occurred, we kind of were already dipping in form a little bit, not totally falling off a cliff, but a little bit of a dip in form. But once that suspension occurred and the Leagues Cup break happened, our exit out of Leagues Cup, we ended up really seeing just a complete dive happen to this team. We saw, Chicho Arango's goals dried up. We weren't getting contributions from anywhere else. We had transferred Andres Gomez, so we didn't have that safety net there. Whenever Chicho Arango wasn't scoring, even though in the first half of the season it was very little, Andres Gomez was there to be able to kind of add some, support in the goal scoring aspect. But with Andres Gomez being transferred over to France and then Chicho Arango not putting goals away, there wasn't really anybody else on the team that was stepping up. We obviously have Diego Luna, who is always a star in our eyes, a key contributor to this team, but he could only do so much with the way we were playing. So going into playoffs, obviously it was kind of that same feel. We felt like we were kind of walking in backwards. We did finish in third place in the Western Conference. It was a season high. It was a record for the club for season high total of 59 points, which was very good. We seem to have gotten our home field advantage back, which we had lost in the previous season. So all things considered, it was a pretty decent regular season. It was just unfortunate to see how great the season started and then how poorly it ended, and I think that affected us in the playoffs, which ended up causing us to lose in a playoff or in a penalty shootout to Minnesota. So
Mm-hmm.
I think as an RSL fan, it's really bittersweet because it's like, yeah, we did accomplish many of these things. Um, you know, like I said, season high record for the club as far as points goes. We finished third in the Western Conference. We had home field advantage. But I think with all the drama that happened around Chicho Arango, and then with how the team ended up performing in the latter half of the season, it didn't really fare well for us in the playoffs. And I think that was kind of a good representation of how this team was going that season. So I think going into this season, um, obviously we don't have Chicho Arango. He's wearing some different colors this season, which we're going to talk about,
I
right?
wonder
And
where you
we're,
went.
we'll see. Yeah, we'll see here pretty soon what he's going to look like in those kits. I know I've already seen him on social media rocking the jersey. So it'll be interested to see him playing with that on the field now. But you know, really, what it comes down to this team is we're returning a lot of the core roster that we had from last year that a lot of fans are excited about and feel very strongly about. Our back line seems pretty strong. The only question really is our right back
Hmm.
position, which we already have a few players that are returning and competing for that same position as they were last year. That at times did really well and at times did not so well. But as far as the rest of the back line, very solid, very good back line that we feel good with. Our midfield is still there, nice, intact, and strong, with even more growth, I think, that we've seen during the offseason with players like Emeka Anelli, the return of Pablo Ruiz from injury, and then
Only
obviously
really losing Matt Crooks, right?
and then yeah, and we did lose Matt Crooks, which you know some fans will say they're very sad about. Some fans will kind of be like indifferent about it. I was someone who really liked him. I think he's someone who didn't get enough credit for the things that he did. A very selfless player, one of those players where his name wasn't going to show up much in the numbers, but just in the way the game was played
Yeah.
and the way the team worked on the field, he had a lot to do with that. So I was sad that he left, but you know, I think the reason we're excited though is it opens up more time for someone like Diogo
Oh
Gonçalves,
yeah.
sorry, who we're really excited about, and I think is the pinnacle for this season. That if he is unlocked and he really is able to figure this league out, he can do wonders for us. And I think he's the way we become a contending team for MLS Cup.
Yeah, I
But
agree with that. And I just want to add on Matt Crooks. I feel
yeah,
like there's a little bit of a unfinished business there because you had him for half a season before
hmm
he moved on to Hull City. And for a player of his age, being English, of course, Hull City probably not going to get promoted, but still, the EFL Championship is very competitive. That could be open some doors for him in his career down the road. I would have felt like if Hernan Lopez, who was linked to a move away for us,
hmm
if he were to leave without playing a full season, like what could have been if he had that full season. But at the same time, I think that there's still room for excitement. And as you mentioned, Diego Gonçalves, I think he arrived in time to play against San Jose Earthquakes in the second of the two fixtures last season. We got to see flashes of what he can provide, so I'm excited for him too.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you nailed it with those comments. So really, as what we're trying to figure out is where the goal is going to come from, right?
Yeah.
Because we did lose Chicho Arango, we did lose Andres Gomez, and that was the majority of our goal scoring. Obviously, we have Diego Luna returning. I think he's going to pick up even more so than what he did last season. He's coming off the nose injury that we saw in the U.S. national
Oh.
team game, but we know what Pochettino had to say about that. So we were pretty happy for the guy that he got that recognition with the manager. But I think he's going to do very well with us. I think
Yes,
he's
he
going to
will.
pick up his stats and continue to ball out for RSL. And then really
Just
that
quick on
number.
Diego Luna as well. Abram, is it fair to say that now that Chicho Arango's on our team, Diego Luna is our favorite player still on that Real Salt Lake roster?
Evan, I don't know why you assumed that he wasn't already my favorite player on the RSL roster. That guy drips swag. He, you know what I mean. He's wonderful to watch play. He looks good doing it. You know, he's always been my favorite player on that team, not just because of the Quake connection, but also just everything about him. He's a wonderful player. Great. I'm happy for you guys that you still have him. You didn't lose all the quality that you guys had. 'Cause Chicho was huge for you guys. So
Right.
yeah,
Usually, a player with his technical abilities who happens to be eligible for the U.S. men's national team is already playing in Europe these
Yep.
days, let alone still in Major League Soccer. I mean, he's going to be 22, 23 by the time the 2026 World Cup comes around. We'll see what happens in terms of his involvement there. If not then, maybe 2030. But I think he's a really exciting player for Real Salt Lake. And he's one of those reasons why, despite some big names leaving, that you can be optimistic about where this team is headed.
Right. Yeah. And I completely agree. And so I think he's going to contribute hugely for our team. He might miss some time for national team appearances, but we'll see where that goes. So again, the number 9 is the biggest question mark, right? We have some newcomers that are all fighting for that position. We don't really have anyone on this team right now who has shown that they can put goals in the back of the net for RSL yet. So there's a lot to be seen as far as at that 9 position. But I think what gives us comfort is that we do have Diogo Gonçalves, Dominic Marchuk, who is also going to be a bright star.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's the next big transfer to Europe for RSL. I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to hang on to him, but hopefully we can keep him for the rest of this season. And then Diego Luna, obviously, but we also have Lachlan Brook, who is a Australian player that we got last year that is very good as well and can have his moments. So although that number 9 is a big question mark, and the reason for that question mark is because the previous number 9 is now on your team. I think it'll be exciting to see what this team can put together and what 9 decides to take that, just take that mantle and be like, I'm going to be the new 9. And it's also important to remember that RSLFO has been very public about saying they're still very open to bringing in a DP9. So although we don't have a 9 at the moment, but we do have like 3 forwards competing for that 9, there's still the competition of the market right now that the EPO is looking at to bring in a number 9 and bring in some more quality to this team.
I'll be looking at Elias Manuel from the New York Red Bulls that you acquired in the trade to be that current solution for that number 9 role. I know he wasn't an everyday starter for New York Red Bulls, but granted, he had to compete with Captain Lewis Morgan to life, love, and goals over there. And a Belgian forward that Quakes fans don't remember too fondly. Now he's over in Europe. Good luck, I guess. But point is, Elias Manuel, for the minutes that he was given, I think he's shown that he is a capable starter in Major League Soccer, and I don't think you can imagine a much better scenario than starting for a team that finished third in the Western Conference when you were perhaps a super sub in your previous club. Because usually to get more minutes from that situation, you would have to go further down the table rather than, Red Bulls ended up making the MLS Cup, but still in terms of standing wise.
Right, and forgive me for not even mentioning this name at this point, but yeah, Anderson Julio, we traded away to FC Dallas for Junkwa and some allocation money along with that trades that we got in return for that. So with Anderson Julio being gone, we kind of brought in at least Manuel to be that almost like for like replacement in a sense. I think Anderson Julio's a little bit more proven and has shown some more just stats and appearances, but it was kind of someone on their mind that they thought had that like for like Anderson Julio, the way that he can run, the way that he plays off the ball, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see where he plays. I think Forster Ayago too from Nashville that we got in the reentry draft is a really big one that we're looking at. I know when the preseason games were occurring, he seemed to be very active in that role. Seemed to show some really good stuff. I know Pablo's really high on him, so it'll be interesting to see where he goes. And then we also got Ariel. I'm blanking on his last name, but he's an Australian league transfer that we got. He's yes. We're interested to see how he gels into this team as well. So, like I said, a lot of new players that we're still seeing who's going to work out that 9. Hopefully, one of them pans out, and if not, I think the FO is still going to be very heavily looking to bring in a bigger number 9. And rumor has it is that they're looking specifically for someone who has proven themselves in MLS. To come in and fit in that role, but that'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. So,
right. On the topic of incoming players, Abrams. So obviously a lot is expected out of Chicho Arango and Joseph Martinez, but I think of the class of the New England Revolution that Bruce Arenas recruited. Who out of Harks, Kay, Romney, and Lima do you expect to be the biggest difference makers in the early goings for the Earthquakes?
So I have not been impressed. I've seen very limited, showings. To be candid, I don't have KTVU whatever plus. I wasn't able to watch 2 of the 3 Coachella games. But in the one that I did watch, I thought that Harks and Kay were not strong enough in the midfield. It made me really miss Jackson Ewell. And, obviously I've been advocating for Ewell the whole time he was here, but, we did have to let him go because of financial reasons. He's very expensive for what you get from him. But I still think we have a big hole in Ewell's spot. That being said, I think of the 4, I'm not really impressed. 5 if you count Earl Edwards. Sorry, I don't know why I said Earl Jones. But Earl Edwards, is another. But I think the only one that stands out to me as someone who's going to start consistently and, make any difference is Romney. I think that he's a solid center back who's proven in this league, has a lot of experience, left-footed, and that's always really nice to have a center back, especially because we lost Beeson. But anyways, anyone else, Nick Lima, his numbers are not convincing in my opinion, and Ian Harks
He might
doesn't
have gotten
look.
the best out of Nick Lima in his first spell for the Earthquakes.
Yeah, and that's great. That we had him at that time, but he's never so far regained that form to, he was a national team, player alongside Yedlin. Like he was competing with that guy for the national team at that time. We never seen that guy since. And like I said, I'm not really big on Anthony Kay or Ian Harkes. They don't seem like they are really gelling quite yet with the rest of the team. So that's the area of weakness in my opinion, the center midfield. But I think Romney has a really good spot in this team, whether he's in rotation or the solidified starter. You have to see. But I know Bruce likes him. He's brought him along with him everywhere he goes. Not everywhere, but for the most part, LA Galaxy, England Revolution. He's really big on Romney, so I'm hoping
Yeah, he
that
broke through
they
right
can.
after the last of those three Galaxy MLS Cups in the early 2010s. Let me play him a song. I'm on the world's smallest violin. But, hopefully we get him some exciting games and maybe some silverware during this time with the San Jose Earthquakes. I think it's a little bit early to think about that. But if Bruce Arena is able to get this project up and running and he has the benefit of time to get San Jose Earthquakes back to respectability, we'll see in a couple seasons' time.
And
But
as from an outsider perspective, as an RSL fan, what I like about this approach you guys have going into the season is that Bruce has brought in some of his guys where he has feels like he can put his trust in them. It's really hard when you come into a project and you don't really have any familiarity. You're taking over players that you haven't really worked with or haven't worked with in a long time. So I think it's crucial that he was able to bring in some guys that he can trust that are his guys to help kind of cement the culture that Bruce Arena expects out of a team. I think we all know he's a very respected coach, and we all know he's a very, very, very one of the most accomplished coaches in MLS, if not the. But
in U.S. soccer, yeah,
in
Bruce
U.S.
Arena, I
soccer,
believe he coached your coach in the
exactly.
U.S. men's national team.
Right. So it's a very exciting time in my opinion as an Earthquakes fan, and I'm glad he brought in some guys that are his guys to help really cement that culture, that play style that he expects. But then is able to bring in some good names too. You have your Chicho Arangos, your Joseph Martinez's, your Romneys, bringing back Nick Lima. So I think it's going to be a really interesting time for the Earthquakes to see how it all gels together, but an exciting time nonetheless.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and give a little bit of a projected starting lineup from my opinion. I think that Daniel's the undisputed starting goalkeeper. When your backup is Earl Edwards Jr., I think that that's a big of a chasm there. So I am a little bit worried if Daniel were to miss time, but let's just hope for the best in terms of his health this season because whenever he's played at a very high level. He doesn't need that much of a ramp up period to get back to his usual standards when he misses injury. But yeah, that's just the main lingering thing. I think that the fullbacks are going to be Vitor Costa on the left and Nick Lima on the right. And yeah, it's a tough decision to see who's going to partner Rodriguez in a center back spot. I'm going to lean Bruno Wilson for now, but Dave Romney could certainly be that guy. And who knows, maybe Daniel Mooney takes another step forward.
Evan,
So,
if I can,
you
you're
know,
gonna have to add another center back in there because
oh yeah, so
so
it's
far
three
we've been
back
playing with
two,
a back
right?
three. Yeah,
Right. So it could be Wilson. It most likely will be Wilson, Rodriguez, and Romney there. You're right. I'm so used to the old formation
I
that
understand.
I got to incorporate that new setup. So yeah, that kind of is our back five plus keeper. So that likely leaves, it could be two forwards, it could be attacking midfielder, it could be two center midfielders. I think that it's probably going to be either Harks or K alongside, I'd like to say Lopez in that middle area, then Espinoza as Cam, and then I would like to see Martinez and Arango start together. But I don't entirely hate the idea of one starting over the other. But then the question would be if it is a two striker setup, are you trying to fit in Pellegrino in there? Do we trust one of Judd, Buda, or Kikanovic to start to begin this season? So there's still a lot of question marks with the formation change, new coach, players that he's trusted from previous clubs versus some established players. But everyone here has got something to prove. I mean, New England was happy letting us get these players through the means that we did because they weren't necessarily in their plans going forward for a reason. And the San Jose Earthquakes players that played last season want to shove the memories of that awful campaign in the rearview mirror. And the quickest way you can do that is to win as soon as possible. But it's not going to be easy, of course. Real Salt Lake, they have a respectable season. They didn't lose a game in the playoffs in regulation. Technically, penalties count as draws, whether you win or lose on penalties. But San Jose Earthquakes do have a little bit of history of success against Real Salt Lake, but Real Salt Lake are capable of beating anybody in the Western Conference as well. It's a bit of a weird Pokemon type matchup chart if you go into who's got a winning record against who in the Western Conference, but I think we're in for a really good game, and part of that equation, of course, will be who you think is going to be starting for Real Salt Lake if you had to put it into the fruition here.
Yeah. So I think how that's going to line up is obviously our starting goalkeeper last year, Zach McMath, is out. He ended up having to get surgery on his lat, which a lot of fans were questioning why it happened so late into the offseason. Wasn't really given an answer as to why, but because of that, he'll be out for a majority of the season. So for that reason, and we also shipped off Gavin Beavers to Europe, who was the up and coming youngster in that goalkeeper position behind Zach McMath that actually got some starts when Zach McMath wasn't playing as well and had a chance to take on the starting mantle, but obviously wasn't able to grasp that opportunity. But after loaning him away or transferring him away, we brought in the former goalkeeper for Orlando. I can't remember his name off the top
Mason
of
Stajduhar, I believe. I
Yes.
might butcher that.
Yes, that's him. That's him exactly. He had, he wasn't the starter for Orlando, but had a decent amount of appearances for them. So someone who's a younger keeper, but still has some, appearances here in MLS that we brought in for the backup position. And then we brought in Rafa Cabral, who is a very, very experienced goalkeeper. Played for Santos in Brazil. Played for Napoli in Italy in Serie A. Played for Reading in England. So a really experienced goalkeeper. If you see the pictures of him in the RSL kit, he literally looks like he's an assassin waiting for his assignment. So he just looks raring to go. So I'm really excited to see how he does. So Rafa Cabral will be the starting goalkeeper. Coming into the season, especially for the San Jose Earthquakes game. And then on the left, we have Alexandros Katranis, who's the Greek left back that we brought in last year that he became a fan favorite instantly. No one had a lot of expectations for him, and he immediately took that role and ran with it. His quote for this upcoming Champions League game that we have on Wednesday was literally, "What's his mentality coming into this game?" And he said, "My mentality is my life, your death." Is what he's saying.
Oh, so I'm sensing a theme here: assassin and then Greek gladiator.
So we're a very intense couple guys we have on this team. But then we'll obviously have Justin Glad, who is the experienced academy, homegrown player that we've had on this team for a while, the stalwart in the back line, alongside Brian Vera, next to him as the other center back. The right back position will be a competition between Bodie Hidalgo, Philip Quinton, Jabane Brown. I'm sure I'm blanking on someone else. We just ended up ending our contract with Andrew Brody, so he's no longer a part of the team. That just happened today. But we do have a solid midfield in Emeka Nelly, who had some U.S. national team time during the offseason and is back and will most likely be wearing the captain armband coming into this season, which is really cool to see. And then he'll be playing alongside Brian Ojeda, who is the other strong central midfield that we have in that pairing. Diogo Gonçalves at the 10, which again we're all really excited to see how he does this season. Diego Luna, we would have pictured being on the left wing. That still remains to be seen if he's going to be starting or not. It sounds like he won't be starting in the Champions League game, so that pushes me to think he will be starting for San Jose, but that remains to be seen. But if it were my hope, it would be him at the left wing, and then we would see Dominic Markchuk at the right wing, with Forster Ayago is actually going to be my prediction, the re-entry draft selectee from Nashville at the 9. And so, it's again a very solid returning core that we have with some new guys sprinkled in to see how they gel. With a lot of good depth, actually. We have Pablo Ruiz returning, who came off of his MCL, ACL injury. We still have some solid depth at the center back position. So yeah, it'll be really interesting and fun to see how this plays out between the two teams.
Abram, what are some early areas where you think this game could be won or lost? Like, where are some positions for either the Quakes or RSL you're looking at?
Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier. I'm not impressed with our current midfield. I'm not sure how much you got to see of the footage of the Coachella
Wasn't
game.
great.
Yeah, it wasn't great. You predicted Hernan to start alongside Kay or Harks. It kind of looks like the three of them are on the field at the same time, with Hernan playing higher up and Espinosa playing at the wing back. Uh,
Oh, okay.
so instead of so he is Hernan's the cam, and Espinosa has been the regular wing back. That's preseason. We don't know what's actually going to happen,
Yeah, and that's
but
the challenge of trying to figure out lineups for the first game of the season.
it's
Once
hard,
the first game of the season happens, then we have something to go off of and be like, okay, this worked,
right?
this didn't work, this is where this person is playing now, so now we can adjust our expectations. But I think a lot of us are still, mainly me, I'll speak for myself, I'm thinking about 2024 Quakes and still wrapping my head around what we're seeing in preseason. But continue.
Yeah, as I was saying, the center and midfield I think is where it's going to be won or lost. Our defense has been leaking goals, but I think with the new kind of lineups that they're going to have, ourselves kind of been struggling up front, and so if we could take advantage of that and use our attacking firepower, that kind of balances things out in my opinion. So really the center midfield, if you have Marcel Ruiz, I call him Rocket Man because of the amount of long shots he likes to let off. We spoke about it last time LD was on the show. It's kind of ridiculous and really fun to watch when they get close or go in. But no, I think the center midfield is where it's we might struggle, and I think that I've heard from other RSL fans that they are pretty confident in their center midfield. So we're gonna have to see how that goes.
Yeah. How are you feeling about that midfield battle, LD?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a very aggressive physical one. I believe so. One thing that I'm excited to see is with the Meccanelli and Brian Ojeda, if they can pick up that partnership that they had last season. I mean, it was one of in my opinion, the best central midfield pairings in the league. A very underrated pairing in the league, in my opinion. So I think these games tend to be a little bit uglier, right? The passing isn't as crisp, the chemistry isn't as smooth. So a lot of the times these opening MLS games come down to who's the most physical, right? Who's more up for this game in that sense. And so I think when it comes to watching the central midfield showdown between the Quakes and RSL, it's really going to come down to that. And if RSL isn't ready for that, I know that Quakes midfield is going to, definitely eat that midfield up if we're not ready to come out and battle in San Jose. And remember, we haven't had great success in San Jose overall. I feel like every time we come up there, we end up losing, or it's a draw, or I don't remember too many victories in San Jose. One of my best moments, though, will forever be the Javier Morales banger deflection off the wall from a free kick that he scored. That was one of my favorite moments in RSL San Jose matchups. But yeah, I think it's going to be a very physical game. And so if we're not up for it, it might be something that we'll be regretting, because that could eventually cost the game for us going into San Jose.
Yeah, I think one thing that RSL constantly gets right is midfielders of all varieties. You get Moraleses as well as your Beckermans. They tend to play very well for Real Salt Lake.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think among the MLS that I can remember for the last 15 years, I think it still stands. Maybe a tectonic take. Abram, you can let me know if you agree. Top five hairstyle, Kyle Beckerman?
Gotta be. Gotta be.
Uh, it looks good on
It
him. It looks good on him.
looks good on him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, but I want you to instead though imagine that Kyle Beckerman hair. Forget about the RSL kit, but remember 2014 U.S. World Cup with that hair. That's when it
Yes.
was the most magical, in my opinion. I still will die on this hill. If he would have started in that game against Belgium, we would have advanced. I still will die on that hill to this day.
Yeah. I
We won't
mean,
talk
it's hard
about
to
that
miss
game
him.
anymore. That's all we have to say about the Belgium
There's a
game.
reason I didn't bring up one player in that
Yeah,
sense.
no,
Yeah.
but
It's
yeah.
hard to miss him when he was playing in the World Cup stage. Of course, more spotlight, more camera. But
Hmm.
seeing him play alongside like Thomas Müller and Kevin De Bruyne, I admit I had a little bit of concerns for him, but he played very well, and he more
Hmm.
than justified his spot on that roster. And I was also very happy that Nick Raimondo got to be on the World Cup roster too.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Of course, Chris Wondolowski, happier memories do often involve him scoring against Real Salt Lake. I'll remember one of the tweets that Real Salt Lake's account said, "We can't wait for him to retire on his farewell tour." And I'm like, okay, fair enough. That was a little bit of humor there. But it just goes to show that even though that we're not direct rivals, we're not part of the Rocky Mountain area, you're not in California, that we have some great matches here. And I feel like that's why I'm kind of leaning toward this is going to be a higher scoring game than a lower scoring one. Would that be fair, LD?
I mean, the preseason shows that
Yeah.
we scored, I think, 3 goals a game in our preseason games, but we also let in 3 goals a game in
There
our
you go.
preseason games. So, I don't like to always use preseason as the sample size for what's going to happen in the season, because you'll see teams that go winless and get absolutely smacked in the preseason just all of a sudden ball out in that first game in MLS, and then they just go on a tear in that first part of the year. So, I don't put too much into preseason, but I would not be shocked as well if this ended up being a very high scoring game between both teams.
Abram, are you expecting a goal fest more than a defensive showpiece?
Evan, we have Christian Espinosa, Hernan Lopez, Jose Martinez, Chicho Arango, all on the same team. All of those guys, they're all on one team. There's something's gonna happen. I don't know what. So, like you were saying, this game is always very spicy. There's no reason for us to have a rivalry, kind of like Liverpool and Manchester City, except less good. Like we just the
Just
games
slightly.
between us just happen to be really fun to watch. So I think in that sense we do have a rivalry, but no, geological or historical rivalry. Just vibes. A
I mean,
rivalry of vibes.
as far as though player connections, you have the Diego Luna, you have Chicho Arango. There's
Yeah.
another player connection there. What am I forgetting? There's one more
Fidel
between us.
Barajas.
Yes, Fidel Barajas. Yes.
Yeah.
So you would think that, I don't know if it necessarily is a rivalry, but there is some decent amount of history when it comes to players, and
There's
I would hate
beef.
to say we're mainly on the receiving end of that. So, but we'll see. This might change this year with us giving you Chicho, and if he ends up, being as good as he was the beginning of our season, but now he's doing that next to Josef Martinez, Christian Espinoza, Hernan Lopez. I think you guys are in a much better spot to be as successful, if not more, with a Chicho Arango playing at that caliber, if he can get to that point.
Yeah, he's the main reason why I'm looking forward to this season beyond the obligation of covering the Earthquakes. It's that we need to plug in a few holes, but in the meantime, while we do that, we could go back to Goonies Never Say Die, scoring our way out of problems back in 2012. But that would be really cool. And on Fidel Barajas, it's nice to be able to root for him again for Chivas de Guadalajara. So we're going to end this part of the main podcast by asking all three of us fill in the blank. My team will win if ... So we'll start with Abram. The San Jose Earthquakes will win if what happens?
The San Jose Earthquakes will win if RSL somehow lets us have the midfield battle. I think that maybe, we could get out of it by scoring more, but I don't think that the attacking lineup has necessarily gelled as much as we'd need them to score us out of a deficit. And our defense has not gelled either. So there's a lot of cohesion issues right now. But I think that if we can take away where I think that RSL are strong right now, then obviously that would be beneficial to us. So I think that I say it's a lot, but it's accurate. The midfield battle is going to be huge for this game.
All right. LD, Real Salt Lake will win if what happens?
RSL will win if Diogo Gonçalves ends up being the player of the match. I think that's the case because this team will go as he goes, in my opinion. And so if Diogo Gonçalves is the player of the match, I have a hard time believing that it doesn't end up in an RSL win.
All right, and I believe the San Jose Earthquakes will win if Dave Romney is very impressive in his debut. I'm not going to be as bold as to say that we keep a clean sheet. I think those will be very rare this season. Uh, However, I think that in a three in the back system with Romney, Rodriguez, and Bruno Wilson, I think they complement each other's strengths pretty well. And especially if Rodriguez is going to have a few dribbles into the midfield, maybe the opposition half, then Romney is going to need to be that watchdog looking for the counterattack in case San Jose Earthquakes turn the ball over in a dangerous spot. And as Abram mentioned, the more I think of it, the more it's becoming clear that he's probably the pick of the bunch of the New England kids coming in here. And we'll see what happens there. But either way, I look forward to talking to you, to Hayden, to the rest of the Royal Riot crew about this game as it happens and after the game. It's going to be a lot of fun. One last segment before we go into what you have coming up, LD, is I do a little article series where I give recommendations for which matches to watch over the weekend. Give me one European and one non-RSL involved MLS game that you're looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, so for me, it's got to be the Copa del Rey matchup that's going to be between Barcelona and Atleti.
Excellent choice.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be definitely the one on my radar. If any of you are trying to find a good soccer match to watch that's upcoming, it's got to be that one in my opinion. Trust me, there's a lot of good games going on in EPL, in Champions League, but for me, this Copa del Rey match is going to be a phenomenal one to watch. So that would be my choice for non-MLS, and then for MLS, I'm kind of split. Living out here in Miami as a diehard RSL fan, I obviously go to a lot of the Inter Miami games. I actually have season tickets to Inter Miami. If I'm not selling half of them for for those who want to see Messi, I'm usually there at the games. So the Inter Miami New York City one is one that I'm interested in seeing. However, I would say that the one that will most have my attention and I'm excited to watch will be Galaxy versus San Diego. Mainly because I love watching expansion teams play in their first game. It'll be fun to just see a new team with a new jersey, a new roster. So that'll be exciting for me. So if I had to choose, I'm gonna stick to West Coast and go with the San Diego LA Galaxy game, especially because it's a Cali matchup, and those always seem to be ones that bring a good outcome when it comes to being a neutral fan.
Abram, do you want to weigh in on a non-Quakes game you're looking forward to? I could also give you a suggestion.
Yes, please, because I don't know. I haven't been watching anything. My life has been really crazy. As you guys can tell, I barely got here on time. On time is an exaggeration. 5 minutes after we said we'd start. But yeah, I've been a little bit busy. So if you could tell me, that'd be great.
Well, your favorite Premier League team could take a few notes from their opponents this weekend. Nottingham Forest, they got crushed one week by Bournemouth, and then they responded with a big one against Brighton. So maybe Newcastle will be able to dust themselves off from a heavy defeat against Manchester City and come up against the Nottingham Forest side that's also looking to bounce back from a defeat against Fulham. I think that's going to be a standout Premier League fixture for us to watch, Abram.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, and it's a scary game because I'm not confident. Like, obviously, Nottingham Forest aren't the biggest name, but they've had a really good season, and I'm not looking forward to watching Chris Wood come back and score against his former team. I didn't like him when he played for us, and I hope he just doesn't score against us. That's all I'm hoping for.
I think he's just rejuvenated because New Zealand finally get the OFC full bid for a World Cup. So Chris Wood knows that he's actually going to be in a World Cup again. So, or at least New Zealand will be. But for me, I'll also throw in keeping the Spanish theme going. Monday, Sevilla versus Mallorca. I think that's going to be a sneaky good La Liga fixture. Both those teams have some ambitions to maybe get European qualification. There's quite a bit of teams beyond, I believe, Villarreal in fifth place. They're all fighting for that sixth and seventh spot. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes there. As for my MLS game, not involving the Earthquakes, there's a lot of options in that 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 5:30 Mountain Time slot for the MLS, but I'm looking at FC Cincinnati versus New York Red Bulls. I think that FC Cincinnati has a lot to prove this season. They've had 3 really good seasons, but haven't gone further than the conference championship. So they're going to want to make a statement against the defending MLS Cup runners-up New York Red Bulls there. But lastly, LD, tell us a little bit about what the Royal Riot podcast has going on for this upcoming season for Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals.
Yeah, so we're super excited. As you guys know, we do cover the Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals side. Our Utah Royals listening base is only growing. They do a good job over there. Stockton, who used to be part of the RSL side, but is a diehard Utah Royals fan, and he left our side of the podcast to go help build that Royals side, and he's done an excellent job leading that. Alongside with Maggie, Brooke, and Sean, they've just done a phenomenal job. I love it because they added their own little flavor to their side of the podcast. So even though we're all part of the Royal Riot umbrella, when you're listening to our 2 podcasts, they just have a different feel, a different vibe. So it's almost like you're listening to 2 different podcasts, which I think is a good thing because it mixes it up. We last year we got picked up by our local news network, ABC4 Utah, which was big for us.
Congratulations, by the way, that's incredible.
Thank you. We appreciate that. So a lot of hard work. Hayden and Stockton, who started this thing out on their own. We thought it would take a lot longer, to be honest, to accomplish something like that. But we, been grinding the last few seasons, and it was just a really cool opportunity that we had to partner with them. And so they're only going to continue to help us, and they're giving us a lot more freedom, a lot more leash to be creative with what we want to do with the podcast. So a lot more player interviews, a lot more social media content, a lot more game day interviews with players, fans outside the stadium. So it's going to be really fun. I think we're starting to really not only just be a podcast, but we're starting to be a platform for just content related to RSL in general. So it'll be fun for fans to not only listen to our podcast episodes, but now that they can find us on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, all the social media platforms, to not just listen to our voices, but be able to see us interact with fans and players, coaches, staff on the daily. So we're super excited for that. And we're just going to continue to keep growing, and we appreciate everybody's support, especially awesome podcasts like yours. Always love teaming up with Tectonic Takes. So happy to see the growth and the continuous strides you guys continue to make. And it's always a pleasure to team up with you guys, and we look forward to more meetings in the future.
Yeah, this has been a beautiful friendship, not just between podcasts, but between the people involved in them. And we can speak from experience that we've been able to see the variety of content that you've all produced. We've seen those local news outlet articles, and they are legit, and we're really proud of all you've accomplished. Where can we follow you on social media?
Yeah, so you can follow us at Royal Riot Pod. That's our handle on all social media platforms. You can also go to abc4utah.com, and they have our link to Royal Riot podcast content, whether that's episodes or, like we said, videos that we share. All sorts of content that you can digest if you're looking to learn a little bit more about RSL. But at least when it's RSL versus San Jose, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of how RSL is doing, you can always check us out there. We always try to team up with other podcasts from other clubs to get their insights on how their teams are doing as well. So it's a good thing to check out. So yeah, make sure you follow us on all those platforms, and hopefully you'll enjoy our content as you do.
Yep. And Abram, where can people follow you, especially when it comes to both Quakes and the town?
Yeah, the only place right now I really covered, soccer is X or Twitter. I still call it Twitter. You can follow me at L Bambastic, at L_Bambastic on Twitter, and that's pretty much the only place to cover soccer. Unless you want to see me, like, I don't know, just post pictures with my girlfriend. It's not very interesting. But yeah, just stick to Twitter.
Don't tell your girlfriend that.
Yeah, come on, Abram.
I don't think she thinks the pictures are very interesting for soccer fans either. She'll tell you guys to stick to Twitter as well.
All right. Similarly, my social media, it does talk a lot about soccer, not just the Quakes, but also pretty much anything that I'm into. So if you're interested in that, you can follow me on Twitter and at Blue Sky at Ivan Ornelas2, or on Instagram at Ivan the Writer95. I post all my articles on my social media platforms. I will be writing regular articles for San Jose Earthquakes games, especially the ones I can attend in person. which will include the home opener this Saturday. I look forward to seeing you all there, those of you that can join us. And once again, thank you for your time, LD and Abram. This has been a blast. Go Quakes, and after this game, good luck to RSL.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for watching.